Welcome to the Horizon Europe Info Day session on data sharing in the Common European Data Space. My name is Kimmo Rossi. I'm from Unit Connect G1, Data Policy and Innovation. And I'm going to present you the two topics that you see on this first screen. Before going to the core topics, a few words of introduction. The communication, A European Strategy for Data, was published in February 2020. It outlined the overall goals and roadmap towards a data economy where data assets can be traded and shared and exchanged just like any other commodities. This roadmap consists of policy actions, legislative actions, and technology support. The legislative framework consists of acts, some of which you see here on the screen: Data Governance Act, Implementing Act on High-Value Datasets, and the Data Act, which is still to come. The Data Governance Act exists as a Commission proposal already. A central concept in this framework are the common European data spaces. Data spaces are concrete arrangements in which data sharing and pooling can happen. So this is a very broad definition, but this is as much as you can say in common in general about the data spaces, because they are all different. It all depends on the application domain and the sector, how the data space will actually look like, how centralized it is or how distributed it is, and what is the architecture, what is the level of security needed, what kind of data is handled, how sensitive is that data. So a data space in healthcare will look different from the data space in industry and manufacturing, just because the data handled in the data space is so different. Horizon Europe program will fund the technology basis and the methodology for the data spaces and the innovation in technology. And another funding program, Digital Europe, will fund the implementation and deployment and the operations and also the coordination of the data spaces. There are several links with national and sectoral data sharing schemes like GaiaX, for example. This slide illustrates the timeline of the different legislative initiatives. I take as an example, just to highlight, the first one, the Data Governance Act, which, as I said, exists as a Commission proposal. It governs, among other things, data intermediaries, which are companies that bring data producers and data consumers together so that the data will find their users, and these companies make this their living. They earn their euros in trading data assets which do not belong to them. Then Artificial Intelligence Act, that was published as a Commission proposal in April. It classifies the AI applications to different levels of risk. And at the highest level of risk, there are detailed rules for how data assets must be handled. So data that is used, for example, for training artificial intelligence systems. If you are familiar with the Horizon 2020 program, it may be useful to look at the fundamental differences between Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe. In Horizon Europe, we have a new political and societal context, which you can summarize in these three lines: green transition, competitiveness and sovereignty of the European industry, and then finally resilience, values and democracy. Now I'm going to move to the topic presentations, but before that I remind you that the only authentic and authoritative source of information is the Horizon Europe work program as it is published in the funding and tenders portal. So if there are any discrepancies between my presentation and the work program, it's the work program that prevails. I will first present you the topic Technologies and Solutions for Compliance, Privacy Preservation, Green and Responsible Data Operations. First, the basic characteristics of the topic. The budget available for this topic is 52 million euro. The indicative project size per project is from 8 to 11 million euro. However, proposals of different size can be proposed, and this does not affect the scoring of your proposal. It is most important that your proposal is of the right size and of the right budget. These are research and innovation actions of a relatively low technology readiness level. The project will start at TRL 2 to 3, and by the end of the project will reach TRL 4 to 5. For details of the TRL levels, see the general Annex B of the work program. This topic implements the European Partnership on AI Data and Robotics. So what is this topic then about? In the introduction, I told you about the intention to set up common European data spaces as a tool for data sharing, as a practical arrangement for ensuring compliance in data sharing. It's very important to ensure that sensitive information like personal data or proprietary corporate data is handled in a compliant way so that the data holders, the data producers can trust that the confidentiality is always respected and all the other legal and moral requirements are respected, like fair remuneration to the data producers. If there is no trust in the sharing mechanism, nobody will use the sharing mechanism, and these data spaces will remain an empty shell. Therefore, it's very important to make available technologies that make compliance with the societal or regulatory requirements easy and scalable and robust, so that these compliance technologies ensure proper and correct handling of all types of data at all moments. This topic builds on earlier work that was funded in the Horizon 2020 program under topic ICT 13, the data platforms. The expected outcome, as stated in the work program, is to produce trustworthy digital technologies to address the requirements of citizens, companies, administrations and public organizations on privacy, commercial and administrative confidentiality, and responsible, fair and environmentally friendly data operations in data spaces. So it's various aspects of compliance that these technologies should be ensuring for all data operations. Perhaps the most useful information for proposers is the section that describes the scope of proposals addressing this topic. And there, every word of the work program counts. And this is why I have faithfully copied the text from the work program. In scope are digital technologies, methods, architectures, and processes for user-friendly, safe, trustworthy, compliant, fair, transparent, accountable, and environmentally sustainable collection, storage, processing, querying, analytics, and delivery of data, and also facilitating sharing of manipulation data in compliance with legislation, safe and secure data handling, sharing, reuse in the context of common European data spaces. Then a novelty that is one of these overarching characteristics of the Horizon Europe program is the green transition, supporting the green transition. As you well know, data operations are often very energy intensive and processing intensive operations. So there is a lot of room for improvement and in a certain way contribution to the green goals if we manage to optimize the data operations in data sharing, especially when this happens in massive scale. So this is a new element of scope and also a new requirement of the topic that we did not have in Horizon 2020 program, so it's very important to take note of that. Also a novelty, because we are now in the context of data for artificial intelligence. We are in this topic in a partnership with AI, data and robotics. So technologies and solutions for ensuring human, fair and ethically sound collection, processing and manipulation of data in line with principles of responsible and trustworthy AI. This is very important, and to see the details of that you can see the white paper on artificial intelligence that describes, and also the principles of trustworthy artificial intelligence as defined by the high-level group of experts on artificial intelligence. Finally, it's very important to create and maintain the links and liaisons with the relevant other types of activities, as I already mentioned at the beginning, for example, the relevant national, regional and transnational initiatives such as Gaia-X in terms of architectures for data sharing, for example, the relevant cybersecurity actions under Cluster 3 of Horizon Europe, the previous Horizon 2020 actions in privacy-preserving technologies, data-centric research infrastructures, and the Digital Europe program that will actually fund the operations and deployment of the data spaces and will set up a support center for the data spaces. And the other topic open for submissions in 2021 is this one, technologies for data management. It serves the same overall purpose than the previous topic, but it is very different in many ways. In this basic characteristics sheet, you can see the differences. Now we are talking about innovation actions and high TRL. So these projects are expected to reach technology readiness level 8 by the end of the project. And 8 is the second highest of the possible TRL ratings. So it is producing systems that are ready to use practically. But it serves the same purpose and is also part of the European Partnership on AI, Data and Robotics. The available budget is 30 million and estimated expected size of project is 5 million. It belongs to the same subheading, data sharing in the common European data space. This topic is about very practical operational tools to enable the FAIR principles. The FAIR principles mean data should be findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable. These are great principles, but we need methods, technologies and tools to make them happen in reality, especially the interoperability of data. The projects resulting from this topic are expected to provide new, secure and energy-efficient data management tools, improving the usability and discoverability of data in different contexts, covering data provenance, synthetic data generation, data quality management, improving data interoperability, metadata management, and ensuring data security, privacy and integrity, especially in the context of data spaces. So all these functionalities are necessary to make the data spaces useful for their users, the users of data and the data providers. So we are looking for practical, robust and scalable tools to ensure that the FAIR principles can be applied to large amounts of data in the context of European data spaces. They should support a holistic approach of the data lifecycle and comply with accountability, fairness, confidentiality, as well as, of course, the FAIR principles for both data and metadata management. From the description of the scope, you can find two possible ways that the projects can address the FAIR principles. First of all, it's possible to enable, support and automate creation and maintenance of common ontologies, vocabularies and data models. That's one possible line. And another possible line is to enable, support and or automate structured, standardized and automated authoring, co-creation, curation, annotation and labeling of data. So one of the lines is working on the matching and the interoperability, and the second one is addressing the creation process of the data. Now it is possible to address one or the other or both in your proposal. And always keep in mind the later use made of the data, especially if that is for artificial intelligence training. The work program lists some links and liaisons that you should ensure in your proposal. For example, the relevant initiatives collecting and or using heterogeneous or linguistic data, including artificial intelligence initiatives such as AI for EU, European Language Grid, or the projects from the Horizon 2020 topic ICT 48, whenever this is appropriate. And also for the interoperability aspect to be credible, it is often necessary to liaise with standardization bodies, but only when this is appropriate. Then some final remarks that apply to both of these topics. Unlike Horizon 2020, we have common impact statements for all the topics in one destination. So these three expected impacts apply to all topics in destination 3 of cluster 4. And they are relatively general and high level. Improved European leadership in the global data economy. Maximized social and economic benefits from the wider and more effective use of data. Reinforced ability for Europe to manage urgent societal challenges. And if you are wondering how to approach this new philosophy of impact, high-level impact, I recommend you to follow these two presentations, how to prepare a successful proposal in Horizon Europe. That will clarify many things, and especially the many differences between Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe, especially for the impact pathway. for which there is no time to go into details in this presentation. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention. So thank you for following this recorded presentation. So here it's me, Kimmo Rossi, the same person, but now joining live from Luxembourg, where I'm based, ready to answer any questions you may have. I don't yet see any questions in Slido, but I have received some questions and comments beforehand, so that I will, as an introduction, while you can enter any questions to Slido, I will just first of all remind you, I had this disclaimer in my presentation that the work program that you find in the funding and tenders portal, the work program is the Bible. Every word of the work program count. It's a very dense document. It's been written under the consideration that really every word has been carefully thought out. So please read the work program, the introduction to the topic. It's 4 pages, and then the entire text of the topic description. And very importantly, read also the general annexes to the work program. You will find very important information like the eligibility conditions in General Annex B, and the technology readiness levels. They are defined also in General Annex B. Then the difference, there was a question already about these various liaisons to other actions, activities that we mention under the scope description of the work program, like liaison, the actions under this topic should liaise with relevant actions under cluster 3, or to build on Horizon 2020 actions on privacy preserving technologies, or to create links with the Data Spaces Support Center in the Digital Europe program, which is not active yet. So you may be wondering what these links are, and so I would say that the difference to Horizon 2020 is that in the old program, the projects came with their data assets, and it was rather autonomous project, and they were small kingdoms by themselves. But in Horizon Europe, you are living in a more connected world, and you actually are expected to serve the data spaces that are emerging gradually. So it's more important that you will serve these emerging data spaces than that you come up with huge amounts of data in the proposal, described in the proposal. So that's why you will not see this requirement anymore in the work program, like you did find that if you were used to see that requirement in Horizon 2020. Then I also remind you of the upcoming Info Day topic, topical Info Day next Thursday, 8th of July at between 10 and 12, organized by the Big Data Value Association. You will find it on the BDVA website. I will see if I can. Okay, I cannot use the chat, so I will not share the link. It's bdva.eu. That's where you will see an advertisement of that topical Info Day. And now I see plenty of questions appearing, so let me start looking at the questions. Okay, let me first make these questions visible to all of you so that you can vote on the questions as well. So you can like the questions. So then I will start with the question with the most likes. Okay. Okay, I think I have now made all the questions visible. You should see 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 questions in Slido. And I will now start looking at them. So in the first topic, the TRL is low, but it is recommended to develop specific use cases, piloting activities in the sectors you highlighted. Yes, it's true. So the expected TRL level at the end of the project is between 4 to 5. But TRL4 means technology validated in lab, and 5 means technology validated in a relevant environment, industrially relevant environment. So it's always necessary to develop use cases. So even if you're working on a lab validated technology pilot, we are in a rather practical sphere, and it's important that you see concrete, you demonstrate concrete examples towards the end of the project, not from the beginning of the project, obviously, because if you're starting from TRL 2 to 3, but towards the end of the project, you are expected to develop use cases. Okay. Are organizations eligible independently on being or not part of the AI partnership mentioned in the title? Okay, so it is, the calls are fully open to all beneficiaries, all applicants. It is not required, not mandatory to be a member of the partnership on AI data and robotics. The partnership is just being launched as we speak. So it's being signed. The memorandum of understanding signature process is ongoing, and there are no members yet except the founding members. So and the fact that these topics belong to the partnership do not limit participation or do not set any requirements for the applicants to participate. It just means that by creating a project, if you win a project in this topic, you will join the club of this partnership one way or the other, and you will later find out what that means. Yes, next question. Should a good proposal, so this is about the first topic, 10101. Should a good proposal hit all keywords in scope, must address green environmental issues, AI trustworthiness, robotics, privacy? Yeah, very good question. The purpose of the scope definition is not to list all the mandatory elements. That's not the purpose of the scope statement. It's the purpose is to define the frames, the limits of the scope. So if you are within these limits, if you're addressing these areas, your proposal is in scope. Because it's very important that even to be in scope, because even if you have a very good proposal with a high expected impact, but if you are out of scope for the topic that you're addressing, you will not be scoring very high. So it's not mandatory to address every single word of the scope statement, but you are expected to address the relevant ones and the ones that you will have an opportunity to address. Now it's maybe a bit obscure what I'm saying, but the evaluators will look at your proposal, that like what is the potential of the thing that you are proposing and how you are responding to that potential. So, and if there are two competing proposals, one of which is addressing more broadly the scope, and the other one more narrowly. They will compare them, and the scoring will be also measuring that comparison. But as I said, not mandatory in every proposal to address every aspect of the scope, but to be in scope and address a sufficient number and the logical number of elements in the scope statement. Why is there only a reference to the FAIR principles, not the RDA, FAIR data maturity model? FAIR, okay, I don't understand the question. How can you deliver everything you asked in 45 pages? Okay, good question. It's a challenge to make your proposal concise and small, and it can be done, and it will serve you the evaluation process, and you also you will have less work to do. Instead of 200 pages, you describe your idea in 45 pages, but you really have to think of to avoid repetition. It is possible to deliver all the information, because there are also other parts of the proposal where you describe the participant, for example, which do not enter into these 45 pages, which is the narrative part describing the methodology. So this, unfortunately, our time is up, and so I have no time to respond questions anymore, but the remaining questions will appear one day in the FAQ section of the participant portal. So if you go to the topic page, which is a link in this event page where you joined this session, you will find a FAQ section there, and we will upload questions and answers there as well. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Rolf Riemenschneider. I'm head of sector Internet of Things in DG Connect E4. And it's a pleasure to present for you the next group of topics under Horizon Cluster 4, Destination 3, World-Leading Data and Computing Technologies. Actually, as mentioned, it's a second group of topics complementing the previous one, which has been presented by my colleague Kimu from G1. The group of topics is coordinated with other topics of Destination 3, with G1, the data unit, as well as jointly implemented with the cloud unit in DG Connect E2. Actually, next slide. Next slide. And actually, the group of topics complement, please go to the next slide. They're part of a wider strategy for European data, which is central to the Commission of Cabinet Breton. You heard about that in the previous section a bit. It has a target to have to foster a European data economy built on a European infrastructure, becoming more independent from dominant cloud providers today, to have federation of cloud infrastructures, to have co-investment with member states, and to build a European cloud framework. It includes actions like cloud rulebook, foster co-investments in cloud-to-edge services and cloud federation and marketplaces. It's supported by a roadmap developed by the European Alliance for Industrial Data and Edge and Cloud. And you heard it also includes funding actions and legislative actions. Kimo presented that in the last session. Co-investments will be supported through the DEP program, the Digital Europe program, a deployment program for European common data spaces. as well as we receive guidance from Gaia X as a French-German initiative for interoperability and standards, as well as for technical architecture for use cases. So going to the next. The reality of today and the cloud market is that there is a high potential for growth in this market for cloud services, about 20% of growth increase per average. The biggest revenue growth will be in infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or hosted private cloud services, or enterprise software as a service revenues. But the situation of today is that more than 75% of global public cloud market is dominated by very few key main players, like Amazon Web Services with a market leader, or Microsoft catching up. But others like Google, Alibaba, and Tencent are gaining market shares with about 50% of revenue increase on an annual basis. This said, there are no European cloud providers which feature globally under the top 10. That calls for a European action, and that explains the need for an action to have a higher autonomy in cloud infrastructure and services and benefit from the growth. So moving to the next, the situation for IoT is a bit different. You see the picture that internet connected devices will be connected through a gateway, most likely to a data center and cloud analytics. For the next 3 to 4 years, 70% of IoT services are cloud-centric. They're dominated by consumer markets like mobile phones, wearables, and consumer IoT. And there's a low adoption rate actually in key industrial sectors like farming, energy, buildings, manufacturing. This said, the market is still in an early phase, so the race is not lost for Europe, and there's an opportunity for European companies to gain leadership in the data economy. So moving to the next slide, what are the emerging trends in that area? As explained, we want to benefit from large growth of data in the data markets. There will be massive growth in devices connected to the internet, which raises technology and policy challenges on a new scale. The digital environment getting more complex. Several devices and systems will be connected and generate large volume of data. Through industrial IoT, cyber-physical systems, which are connecting so far local automation islands. But this central cloud storage this will raise the profile for energy consumption and will push higher demands for transport networks. Also looking at advances in microelectronics following Moore's law and chips, there will be benefit from computation close to the place where data is generated. If you have computation closer to the place where data is generated, you have new features. You can realize new features like real-time and safety, critical control for deterministic and highly reliable automation and control processes. And the benefits for data security. If data is not traveling around the world and stored somewhere in central data spaces or data places outside Europe, it will relax the complexity for data security. So data security and privacy have reduced complexity, are easier to manage if you reduce the exposure surface. Also in terms of energy efficiency, growth in data centers will increase the energy profile consumption at all. If you keep data local and you benefit from local processing, you may gain energy efficiency and reduce carbon footprint. This said, I think cloud will not die. I think cloud will still grow and it will be very important. But with a more diverse computing environment, we aim at the data aggregation, which is more balanced between the cloud, the edge, and the devices, along what we call a computing continuum. So actually, today and in the coming years, we will see that 80% of data processing will happen in the cloud. But after 5 years, we expect this trend will be reversed to move to 20% processing in the cloud and 8% in the edge. So next slide. The next slide shows actually the main pillars of this paradigm shift. On the left-hand side, the new generation of devices with more computation and integration of artificial intelligence at the device level, more connectivity and interactions at local level, device-to-device communication. On the right-hand side, a further development of cloud services towards cognitive clouds, still based on existing business models like infrastructure as a service, software as a service, or platform as a service. But we see a new pillar, which is in the middle, supporting this paradigm shift from cloud to edge, which enables the orchestration between cloud and edge services, and at the same time is able to have sort of compile with a complex management task of increasing number of heterogeneous connected devices. So we're looking with this middle pillar, we're looking at a federation for far edge resources via ad hoc 5G mobile networks to provide cloud resources closer to the edge. Next slide. What we expect from your proposals in order to have some evidence on the benefits for the sectors. So what are the driving sectors? Is it the automotive, where you have more computation in a connected car? Is it the energy grid, the energy sector, where you need to integrate distributed energy resources? Is it the farming, where the tractor collects more and more information from the field and gives advice to the farmer? Or is it the manufacturing shop floor, where you integrate new wireless communication technologies, control, and new functionalities of computing? I think that's what we want to see from a set of proposals and a set of new ideas. If we go to the next slide, we will expand a bit what we expect also to see in the proposals. So actually, what are the key technology drivers? I mentioned here some of them: reasoning on the edge, which means if you're able with new types of processors, integration of computing into devices, if you're able to process AI algorithms at the edge, you can deal with complex environments. You can deal with unexpected events and react spontaneously on the go or on the spot, what we call reasoning on the go. Real-time processes, I explained already. Enhancing security at the edge, meaning that if you keep data local, if you confine sensitive data and you don't send it around the world, and if you filter those data which is sensitive and only allow data which is less sensitive to go around the world, actually you have enhanced security at the edge. Green solutions, I mentioned as well. If decentralized edge solutions can easily integrate distributed renewable energy resources and can benefit from those usage, and as such reduce greenhouse gas emission. The center of the proposal should be cloud edge IoT orchestration, where the cloud still has an important role for learning, dealing with historical data, dispatching new software, or dispatching new functions over the air towards the systems. What we're targeting is the seamless service architecture across a very heterogeneous infrastructure from cloud towards an edge infrastructure. Actually, this new slide shows the number of topics we have under this group. Please go to the next slide. We have three actually topics, research topics called under this group. Only one topic, edge operating system, is called this year. The whole group of topics will be accompanied by a set of CSAs, which will be called also this year. And there will be another area complementing the set on open source for cloud-based services, which will be called next year. So this shows the whole set of services. And you find the information and presentation of the different topics which are open this year in the video streams in this session. So I'm going to the next slide. Why we're doing that? I think we're aiming at a holistic approach under Horizon Europe, starting off with a new strategic approach for cloud edge IoT services, benefiting from a window of opportunity there for European stakeholders to benefit from the data economy and to increase their competitive position. The slide is very complex, but looking at the blue box, the dark blue box in the middle, you see the 3 research objectives. One on decentralized intelligence, one on programming environments for decentralized intelligence at the edge, called for next year. In the middle, the one which is open now, the meta operating systems. And on the right side, the cognitive cloud framework, AI-enabled computing continuum from cloud to edge, a topic which will be open next year as well. So these are the 3 research topics as a core. On the left side, the brown one, the set of topics will be complemented by a call on open source for cloud services, also open next year. And on the right, and the right one, the red one, we're aiming at more downstream research, vertical integration of key driving applications with a call on emerging smart industrial IoT and edge computing system, which is planned in 2023. I'm going to the next slide. More background information you may find from a recent workshop which we had from the strategy forum on next generation IoT and edge computing, where it became clear that there's no European player who can do and manage the complexity of cloud and edge computing alone. So there's a need for partnering between key stakeholders to grow the opportunity and accelerate adoption. That's necessary in the context of fierce competition on a global scale, to have a multi-vendor partnerships and create these alliances. The center of the activities should be in system integration platforms as a must for interoperability and create open standards for cloud native system, a meta operating system, and so on, but avoiding fragmentation in terms of data flow as well as vertical value chains. The system integration platform should be supported by ecosystems and alliances, looking at open standards, open source like Eclipse Linux, or a governance framework for trust and trustworthiness. And it's your part to define the visionary concepts in the proposals related to decentralized intelligence, distributed computing, swarm intelligence, or virtualization of resources. You find the link to the report in the slides. And then moving to the last slide, that basically completes my presentation, my introduction to the group of topics. As said, you find the detailed briefing on the topics in the pre-recorded videos, more relevant information on the data strategy, on the fireside chat, or on the workshop, the next generation IoT and edge computing forum, are also given in the link. And we wish to announce a brokerage event, which is planned on the 7th of July. Registration is open for that one. With that, thank you for your attention. We are now open for any of the questions, and hope this whole introduction to the topics gives you some inspiration and motivation to compile good proposals. Thank you. So we look a bit on the polls which we launched in between. What role does cloud computing play for your current work and business? I think, yeah, quite clear. 40% consider that, or to total 80% consider that very important or fully important. Quite expected result. Does your company invest in the Internet of Things? So what is the maturity of technology? So there's always no opinion. I know, coming. Okay, so full support for IoT and investment in the coming years. All right, next poll. Which the sectors do you plan to cover in your proposal involving edge computing? Okay, we see a strong emphasis on industrial IoT and manufacturing, also not quite really surprising. And then you see a strong interest in transport mobility related to a connected car, an autonomous car, autonomous services, and fewer interests on agriculture, energy, buildings. All right. Which is the layer of cybersecurity you plan to cover in your proposal involving edge computing? Oh, that's a good question. Okay, I think the results show a strong plea for the application layer and the Internet of Things layer, also quite natural response, because I think at the end of the day, the end user will consider the application layer as the key driver for that one, but now bypassed by the Internet of Things layer. The Internet of Things, if you're connecting different heterogeneous objects, it will give you a high complexity of managing the security in sort of a very dynamic and heterogeneous environment. Yeah, this is a major concern, a recurring concern, particularly in the IoT domain. Thank you. Any further points? I think that has been completed. So, and then we may look at if there are any burning questions in Slido.
Can we turn up to the questions, please?
For the time being, I don't see any questions. It may come. There may be some questions. Yes, I see the question now. Popping up. Regarding Gaia X, is partnership membership taken into account in the proposal evaluation? No. Gaia X provides guidelines for the Commission policies, particularly related to the data strategy, the legislative files, and the implementation of data spaces. But these are non-binding guidelines. So I think there is no added value or no tick box if Gaia X members are a partner in the proposal. Next question from Alexandre Petrescu. I noticed 5G mentioned in a few slides, but would 5G and why not 6G be pertinent for the future of IoT and related project proposals? I think we see an opportunity for IoT, cloud, and edge computing, which is happening now. I think, you know, the market is not waiting for 6G. And the orchestration between cloud and IoT devices via the edge is happening most likely via wireless networks that could be ad hoc networks, mesh networks, or could use the local networking facility of 5G and network slicing. So that's why I think there's not it's not obligatory to involve 5G networks, only where it fits. but minimum the same number of networks, of IoT networks built of wireless ad hoc networks, which are as well eligible. Next question. For data 05, do we have to address 3 or 4 of the expected impacts, including also the one of cluster 4 as set out in the strategic plan? I think under the topic cluster 5, you should address as many as possible of the expected outcomes, of the expected impacts. I think the expected impact is a separate criterion in the evaluation, and the different list of the impact has different natures. One is related to the delivery and the impact of higher level major operating systems. The second one is related to European value chains, achieving autonomy in data processing at the edge by building open platforms and ecosystems. And the third one is related to achieving trust. So I think there are 3 complementary expected outcomes. If you demonstrate the contribution to each of them, you have an advantage. But I think the proposal is still eligible if you don't address any of them. But of course, if you address most of them or all of them, you have an advantage in the evaluation. For data 7, what degree of type of engagement do we expect from the demand side CSA? I think data 017 is the CSA. We do not require the demand side directly involved in the proposal, but partners in the CSA should demonstrate direct link to the network or to stakeholders of the demand side. So I think there should be awareness of the key stakeholders. There should be direct linked to network with them, consult them, and derive a strategy based on their input. So mobilization of the demand side is an essential asset in the CSA. Direct of the demand side, stakeholders are not necessary. How much important is the inclusion of 5G technologies taking also into account the upcoming Smart Networks and Services work program? It's a good question, and the work here will be complementary to the SNS work program, as here the focus is much more on the system level side. What is the new paradigm shift from cloud to edge to IoT? How does it change the system design as well as the delivery of reliable systems? So SNS work program is more related to a network as an infrastructure. What are the new services of the network, virtualization of the network? So it's one part of the approach of data 015 of an operating system, but it's not linked to, not bound to 5G technology. So you're not obliged to use 5G technologies. Any other wireless network relevant and mature and used in that domain which you're addressing is eligible as well. So it's an option, but it's not mandatory. How do we see the engagement of CSA with the RIAs in terms of specific expected impact? I think I showed you our holistic approach, with the different bubbles. And what we expect from the CSA is to actually deliver on a strategy and support us on a strategy, as a midterm, long-term strategy from cloud to edge to IoT for European data. I think that is the main core. And the RIAs, the projects which we will fund, are a key element. So meaning focusing on horizontal actions like platform building, working on standards, looking at horizontal issues like security, are an essential work and should be essential work of the CSA to coordinate that with the project selected under data 015. In the call, it is mentioned to involve at least 3 different applications. Should they be mandatory from different domains? I think we had in mind, we have to look at the call text, exactly what's written in the call text. But the call text said that validation through proof of concept or prototype implementations for at least 3 different applications in domains such as mobility, logistics, manufacturing, energy, and other utilities, building and farming, but not limited to those domains. We would prefer to have 3 different domains in terms of heterogeneity or diversity of the application domains, but it's not a mandatory requirement. So again, proposals who demonstrate prototype implementation in 3 different domains would have an advantage compared to those who have 3 different applications in only 2 domains. A further question, data 103 states the tools should be demonstrated by diverse use cases. I'm not familiar with the data 03, which has been presented in the previous session. So I cannot respond to that, and I would like to refer you then to my colleague Kimo Rossi to answer that question directly with him. So any other question? That was the last question. All right, so there are no further question. I think we're pretty much in time. We know it's sort of a quite complex topic because it's a complete new paradigm shift. We ask for meta operating system, which integrating different aspects of system design. We have ambitious objectives for the expected outcome, but we think the market has already touched upon it. It's in an early stage, but we seriously think it's a unique opportunity for European stakeholders at the moment to look at that window of opportunity and to increase their stakes in an emerging data economy, complementing their market efforts in cloud computing. I think that's the part from our side. We hope this information gave you some inspiration as well as clarification on the call. As I said, more details are in the topic description or the topic video briefing. And if you have further questions, don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you so much for your attention. Have a good day. And if you intend to prepare a proposal, good luck for the proposal. And don't forget, there's a ProCatch event on the 7th of July, specifically on that topic. Thank you so much, and we're closing the session. Bye.